iPhone.
And we should be good to go. The joys of trying to make this live and everything else.
Is my audio not complete trash this time?
Your audio is fine, George. It's what happens when you actually stick with your big machine rather than trying to run everything off a laptop. But good. We are in the pre-show element of the Tech Poutine. Let's a time to chill down, grab a drink, get ready, greet people as they walk in. Hi to Mark, hi to Yak. Crispy's here too, or at least he was half an hour ago when we pushed it. So
yeah, it's because I prefer the other chair, and two, it's just.
Well, you saw what happened to my chair yesterday.
Yeah, but
if you notice, there's one arm here, and this one broke off, and so it looks like I'm going to have to buy a new one.
I prefer a nice, comfortable recliner. That's why I was in the other room. Also, this room has a bit of a mess behind me.
That's why anybody with a decent desk job should make sure they get a proper chair with a proper, ergonomics for the back. That's what's really needed.
By the way, do you want me to pull the camera in anymore? Because we're not quite similar sized.
You can. And yeah, unlike some other podcasts and streams, we don't have chair sponsors. It's do you remember Tech Deals?
Yes.
Yeah, they're not streaming anymore. I do need to reach out and see what's going on with them. But I know, for example, they put together something like 42 chairs in 4 years as part of reviews and sponsors and stuff. After the two of them and I think 3 kids, where'd you put the other 37?
Those are gifts to family for holiday.
Yeah. Speaking of holiday, again, welcome everybody who's joining in. We haven't started yet. We didn't have a stream last week because I was on vacation and decided to be ill for half of it. Nice time in the Caucasus, in that part of the world. At one point was 10 miles away, less than, from the Russian border. The last town before the checkpoint, basically. Closest to Russia I'm ever going to be for the next 20 years. Which is a shame because I went to St. Petersburg, a few years before it all happened. And that was fine. That was amazing, visiting, the art and the museums and the cat cafes. It's a shame, never going to be able to go back for another 20 years or so.
It is the way of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah. But it's been a semi-active couple of weeks since our last Tech Poutine. I mean, the headline of the show is Intel's big board meeting. And Intel, through a post on Pat Gelsinger, had a lot to say about their board meeting and the fact that they didn't mention the fact that somebody left the board, which was quite funny. We'll go into that in the show when we start properly. We've got a few other things in the pipe for the episode. AI events are happening aplenty soon. So in a few weeks, I think George and I are already we're going to do another show live together, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Speak about that. And then some just interesting things from around the tech space that you won't hear on any other podcast, really. That's why we're here. We're doing things that we find interesting and not just the generic everybody hears it. And George, we have a comment already. As always, George has a wonderful shirt for monitor color celebration.
Yeah, I do have some colorful shirts. It's because these shirts are almost always comfortable, and that's numero uno, comfort.
I think I need to make a shirt my own, and one that just says leg.
What we need to do is we need to have merch that's like this, but just says Tech Poutine.
Do you know the Tirius research guys, Jim McGregor, Kevin Crewell?
McGregor sounds familiar. The rest of that.
So you can identify them at any tech event that we get invited to because they're in purple shirts, proper dress shirts, and it says Tirius research because they're embroidered.
Yes.
Maybe I should get some, but just with the TechPotato logo or the more logo. It's proper advertising. Proper advertising. Again, welcome to all that are joining. Please, say hi in the comments. Let us know you're here. Let us know your beverage of choice or your cheese of choice. It's quite late here in the UK, so I'm just drinking milk.
No, this is straight up nice coffee.
That's because it's pre-lunch for you. You can have a coffee. I can't have a coffee at this time of night.
Hey, I've had coffee at midnight.
Yeah, but you got up at 1.
No, I've done that before. Got up at like 5 in the morning.
Sune says, should the ARM label really sit on the pectorals, though?
No, well, it should be on the bicep.
Yeah. I don't know. Hi to Noze and Perina and Casper.
Drinking Pepsi.
Welcome. It's the right before we signed in, I caught on the TechPotato Discord, good friend of the show, Crispy, who has managed to acquire one of Intel's
the Nirvana things.
Nirvana AI chip. I may have to get one myself.
Yeah, they're on eBay for like $30 to $45.
Yeah, but they only ship to the US, so I need to make sure I get it shipped to my hotel.
Ship it to me.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, because we're going to be meeting up in a few weeks.
Where's the old one? Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's Goya.
This is Gen 1 Habana. They were selling them for $50. Habana Labs dev kit, confidential under NDA. Open or disassembly are strictly forbidden.
I disassembled mine, so can't wait for that Intel lawsuit. Or cease and desist, excuse me.
You have to post the article. Besides, they showed off the chip. What exactly are you going to show off that they haven't already shown?
Well, delit it and then send it to Fritz. But also, if you've noticed that whole inference line from Habana, so
Goya and Goya 2
and Gao are dead. Like,
there's
been no updates.
No, that's been the case for about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
We noticed. So technically, next week was meant to be Intel Innovation, the big event that they've cancelled, which is good. I no longer have a clash. Next week, I will be at TSMC's packaging conference instead, because they were going to be scheduled for the same day. TSMC are sponsoring me to go out there. We're going to make some beautiful content together about their latest packaging announcements. Should be fun next week.
What I am disappointed that Intel felt like they had to cancel innovation.
Yeah. It's I have this debate back and forth because it's I've made it public, and my client list is public in the description of this episode. If anybody's interested in who my clients are, and Intel is one of them, in the same way that AMD and Qualcomm, but a couple of the startups are. Intel is by far my most engaging client because there are so many events, so many BUs, so much going on. And the question is, do I go to every event? I think last year I skipped innovation just because there was just too much travel in such a short space of time. I mean, for me, going to the Bay Area every couple of weeks just isn't sustainable. That being said, I'm going multiple times, a couple of weeks apart between now and Christmas. Not every couple of weeks, but oh no, sorry, one of those is to Atlanta because we have supercomputing in November.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to make sure I get my new visa before I go. That's always fun.
What
visa?
Yeah.
I was speaking to a French journalist at IFA, and he was saying that in France, you can, when you apply for a US media visa, they typically give you something like 3 years, but his is 10 years. And the reason is because he went to Afghanistan on an invited press tour event thing. And so he had to get NATO certified, NATO approved. So because he has NATO, or not UNESCO, NATO, because he's got NATO approval, the US, but you can't apply for NATO approval. You have to participate in an event.
Basically, you have to be invited.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he said he's done that twice. So
and speaking of visas, I know that the EU is now having this sort of fee thing.
Brexit thing.
No. It's
like an estimate.
Yeah, but you have to apply for it beforehand.
So anyone that travels to the US has to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry, but this is in my opinion, if it's visa free, it should be.
No, it's because ESTA is a visa waiver. It's basically you give all your details of your trip, and they give you a pass for 2 years, basically, to go in and out, and then you have to apply again after 2 years. That's all it is. It's just more documentation, so they know exactly who you are, the fact that you've got a passport. So it's in
today's age, is that really necessary?
I mean, how many visitors does France get a year in tourism? 100 million? Or is that 50 million?
It's I'm pretty sure it's a lot higher than that.
Tourists to France 2023. 100 million, yeah. 100 million, $10 a pop.
Oh, I was thinking the amount of GDP that, I mean, so they make 80 billion euros. So 100 million times 10 is what? A billion?
Yeah.
A whole billion.
Next to 2% of GDP. 1 point.
No, that's of so that 80 billion is GDP product in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that is just domestic tourism.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We've given 15 minutes for people to come in. Welcome, everybody who's come in. Philip, Impulse, Tony, JT, Tui, Zeode, Eskimonster. Good to see you all again, as always. Let's move into the show. I've got a button for this. The Tech Poutine. So, welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Tech Poutine. My name is Potato.
And I am Cheese.
And if we had a guest, they would be the Gravy. This is an attempt at a weekly news show of news that we find interesting. That's not just, some of it's irrelevant to most people, but we find it interesting because we're technical and we like that sort of thing. And the attempt is to go weekly, though we travel a lot. So some weeks it's on Wednesday, some it's on a Thursday, some it's on a Sunday. And I've been on holiday for the last 2 weeks, hence why there wasn't one last week. George and I have been looking at our schedules for the next few weeks, and it looks like we can sync up, and there's going to be a few times where we're actually going to be in the same place. So you'll see some episodes where we are together. Today's topics are extensive. I think we've been lucky. The first 5 episodes, we had a more architecturally relevant set of episodes where we got to speak about a lot about computer architecture.
Yeah.
This one's a lot more news heavy rather than anything product related. But that's good. There's a lot of stuff in the pipe. So headline topic, let's start off with that one. Intel's big board meeting. So for some context to this, for people who don't know, Intel's spending a lot of money and revenue not high enough. So there has been some discussions about exactly how Intel regains leadership, but also how Intel stays afloat with enough money. And we all know that they've been expanding into Europe, into Asia, more into the US, sort of thing. They've stopped doing dividends now for shareholders, and they're trying to make a lot of savings. However, 2 or 3 weeks ago, one of their board members resigned. Lip Bhutan from Walden International, massively well-known tech investor, left the board. He didn't say much about why he was leaving. However, 2 days later, he appeared at Global Foundries Tech Summit, and he gave the keynote. Global Foundries, I've got their mug. And while some jokes were made about being on boards, he didn't expressly mention Intel at all. And it was I was at that event. Interesting, typical update on Global Foundries. Yada yada yada. That we can say that for another time, perhaps. However, as a result of everything that happened, Intel made it known that there was going to be a 3-day board meeting in mid-September, basically for everybody on the board and select investors and advisors to speak about the future of the company and decide where to go. It wasn't known whether we'd know anything from that board meeting. However, Pat has laid out a vision in a very public post, and that's what we're going to go through with you now. Press release, a message from Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger to employees regarding the next phase of Intel's transformation. For those of you who aren't following, Intel made a big announcement about layoffs. Last quarter, 15,000 employees, though if you've been following Intel's employee count in the last 2 years, they've gone from 115K to 130K to 115K to 130K. Now they're going down to 115. That's what that is. It means, unfortunately, some people are going to lose their jobs. As far as I understand it, they've now finished the period of voluntary redundancy. And so now, from now on, it's forced redundancies. That's just one phase. Before we go in, any thoughts on any of that, George?
So, considering what happened with the Q2 financials, I think Pat really does need to set a roadmap and stick to it. And I think that's what he's doing here as we read into it. And I think the decision with regards to, I think there are some good decisions in here. But yeah, I would say let's just get into it.
Cool. So this was posted 4 days ago at 4:04. Press release not found. p.m. Eastern. That's by fluke, literally. So I'm going to read through this because I know some people will just be listening in and not watching. And give me a second. And yeah, sorry, George, just going to mute you because of your background noise for a second while I read through this. You can leave your air conditioning on, don't worry, while I go through this. Team, all eyes have been on Intel since we announced Q2 earnings. There has been no shortage of rumors or of speculation about the company, including last week's board of directors meeting. So I'm writing today provide some updates and outline what comes next. I should say there was a lot of discussion between investors about foundry split, which has been kind of a discussion point for a couple of years now. Let me start by saying, so again, sorry, back to the press release. Let me start by saying we had a highly productive and supportive board meeting. We have a strong board comprised of independent directors whose job it is to challenge and push us to perform at our best. And we had deep discussions about our strategy, our portfolio, and the immediate progress we're making on the plan we announced on August 1st. So that was a plan for OPEX reduction. The board and I agreed that we have a lot of work ahead to drive greater efficiency, so capital efficiency, improve our profitability, and enhance our market competitiveness. And there are 3 key takeaways from last week's meeting that I want to focus on. 1, we must build our momentum in Foundry as we near the launch of Intel 18A and drive greater capital efficiency across this part of our business. That just means making 18A as cheap to make as possible for Foundry and for internal use. We must continue acting with urgency to create a more competitive cost structure and deliver the $10 billion in savings target we announced last month. 3, we must refocus on our strong x86 franchise as we drive our AI strategy while streamlining our product portfolio in service to Intel customers and partners. We'll go into this because that's quite a big statement. We have several pieces of news to share that support these priorities. Amazon Web Services selects Intel Foundry. Today, we announced we will expand our strategic collaboration with AWS. This includes a co-investment in custom chip designs, and we have announced a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar framework covering product and wafers from Intel. Specifically, Intel Foundry will produce an AI fabric chip for AWS on Intel 18A. We'll also produce a custom Xeon 6 chip on Intel 3 that builds on our existing partnership, under which Intel produces Xeon-scale processors for AWS. More broadly, we expect to have deep engagement with AWS on additional designs spanning Intel 18A, Intel 18AP, and Intel 14A. We'll get into what those are in a bit. This framework reflects the power of our better together strategy, anchored on our integrated portfolio across Foundry services, infrastructure, and x86 products. And with the 5 nodes, 4 years finish line in sight, we are beginning to see a meaningful uptick in interest from Foundry customers. This includes continued momentum in advanced packaging, which remains a meaningful differentiator for Intel Foundry, as we have tripled our deal pipeline since the beginning of the year. No details on what that pipeline is. They've said $15 billion, but that's the entirety of Foundry. US Secure Enclave Award. Earlier today, so on the 16th, we also announced that Intel has been awarded up to $3 billion in direct funding under the CHIPS and Science Act for the US government's Secure Enclave program. This program is designed to expand the trusted manufacturing of leading-edge semiconductors for the US government. As the only American company that both designs and manufactures leading-edge logic chips, we will help secure the domestic chip supply chain. This news, combined with our AWS announcement, demonstrates the continued progress we are making to build a world-class Foundry business. And then a big topic here, greater independence for Intel Foundry. To build on our progress, we plan to establish Intel Foundry as an independent subsidiary inside of Intel. This governance structure will complete the process we initiated earlier this year when we separated the P&L and financial reporting for Intel Foundry and Intel products. A subsidiary structure will unlock important benefits. It provides our external Foundry customers and suppliers with a clearer separation and independence from the rest of Intel. Importantly, it also gives us future flexibility to evaluate independent sources of funding and optimize the capital structure of each business to maximize growth and shareholder value creation. There is no change to our Intel Foundry leadership team, which continues to report to me. So report to Pat Gelsinger. If they reported to me, that would be interesting. We will also establish an operating board that includes independent directors to govern the subsidiary. This supports our continued focus on driving greater transparency, optimization, and accountability across the business. A more focused and efficient Intel Foundry will further enhance collaboration with Intel products, and our capabilities across design and manufacturing will remain a source of competitive differentiation and strength. Next section, a more efficient Intel Foundry manufacturing build-out. So a key priority for Intel Foundry is to increase our capital efficiency. Our manufacturing investments across 3 continents have laid the foundation for a world-class foundry for the AI era. Now that we have completed our transition to EUV, it's time to shift from a period of accelerated investment to a more normalized cadence of node development and a more flexible and efficient capital plan. We will maintain our smart capital approach to maximize financial flexibility as we complete our manufacturing build-out, making some adjustments to the near-term scope and pace of our manufacturing expansion. We recently increased capacity in Europe through our fab in Ireland, which will remain our lead European hub for the foreseeable future. We will pause our projects in Poland and Germany by approximately 2 years based on anticipated market demand. Malaysia remains an active design and manufacturing hub through our existing operations. We plan to complete the construction of our new advanced packaging factory in Malaysia, but will align the startup with market conditions and increase utilization of our existing capacity. There are no changes to our other manufacturing locations. We remain committed to our US manufacturing investments and are moving forward with our projects in Arizona, Oregon, New Mexico, and Ohio. We remain well positioned to scale up production around the world based on market demands as we grow our foundry business. The next section is titled A Stronger Intel Products Portfolio Focused on x86. We are also taking actions to strengthen and streamline our Intel products portfolio, where we've identified clear opportunities to drive greater focus, speed, and efficiency. Our top priority is to maximize the value of our x86 franchise across client, edge, and data center markets, including with a broader range of custom chiplets and other customized offerings that meet emerging customer needs, as demonstrated by today's AWS announcement. Our AI investments, including continued leadership of the AI PC category, our strong position with AI in data center, and our accelerator portfolio, will leverage and complement our x86 franchise with a focus on enterprise, cost-efficient inferencing. Alongside this, we're taking steps towards simplifying our product portfolio to unlock efficiency, accelerate innovation, and deliver more integrated solutions. This includes moving our edge and automotive businesses into our client computing group, or CCG, where we have a big opportunity to leverage our core client business and extend our leadership in the AI PC category to a wide range of vertical edge solutions. In our networking and edge business, we'll be focusing the business on networking and telco. And we are moving integrated photonic solutions into DCAI as we focus on driving a more focused R&D plan that's fully aligned with our top business priorities. In addition, we're integrating our software and incubation business into our core business units to foster more integrated roadmaps, unlock efficiencies, and create value. Near final paragraph, an engine of financial performance. Collectively, these changes are critical steps forward as we build a leaner, simpler, and more efficient Intel. And they build on the immediate progress we have made since announcing our plan on August 1st to create a more competitive cost structure. Through our voluntary early retirement and separation offerings, we are more than halfway to our workforce reduction target of approximately 15,000 by the end of the year. We still have difficult decisions to make and will notify impacted employees in the middle of October. Additionally, we're implementing plans to reduce or exit about 2/3 of our real estate globally by the end of the year. I've got something to say about that. As we continue acting with urgency to execute the plan we announced last month, we are also working to carefully manage our cash as we meaningfully improve our balance sheet and liquidity. This includes through selling part of our stake in Altera, which is something we have talked about publicly several times and has long been part of our strategy to generate proceeds for Intel on Altera's path to an IPO. All eyes remain on us. We need to fight for every inch and execute better than ever before, because that's the only way to quiet our critics and deliver our results we know we're capable of achieving. We must maintain our focus on innovation while also becoming an engine of operational efficiency and financial performance that's built to win in this market. As I've said before, this is the most significant transformation of Intel in over 4 decades. Not since the memory to microprocessor transition have we attempted something so essential. We succeeded then, and we will meet this moment and build a stronger Intel for decades to come. On behalf of the entire executive leadership team and our board of directors, thank you for all you're doing. I greatly appreciate your patience, grit, and resilience as we do the hard work needed to deliver on our plan and position our company for the future. Pat. This memo contains forward-looking statements that involve a number of risks and uncertainties, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. And pause.
So,
it's, yeah.
Do you want to start from the top?
No, I need a drink. That's a fair bit.
So I'll talk a bit. If you want to scroll down to the AWS announcements.
Let's. I want to talk about this one first.
Okay.
So this is the we must build our momentum as we near the launch of Intel 18A and drive greater capital efficiency. There was a quote from Intel in the last couple of weeks about essentially ditching 20A. And I think it's important to correct the record here. 20A was never a foundry process, as in it wasn't meant to be used by external customers, just like Intel 4 isn't. Technically, it's used in, I think, an Ericsson silicon thing, but that's because that's a long-term agreement.
As far as I know.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's public. The whole point is, normally with process nodes, what we're used to is a TSMC or a Samsung say, here's our 7-nanometer process node. It does everything. And then that's version 1.0. And then 6-nanometer is like version 1.5. It's the enhancements on top. What 20A is 20A is not a 1.0. It's like a 0.7 or a 0.5. Right? It does high-speed logic and SerDes, but not a lot else. 18A is 1.0. It does everything. So Intel has in the past stated that there will be some products using internally, some internal products using 20A. And what they've turned around and basically said is 18A is so good, we're going to move that stuff to 18A. As in, there's no point waiting around for a separate 20A process internally. Let's just go straight to 18A because 18A is a superset, which kind of makes sense, right? If it's ready and it works. At the same time, there was also a report saying Broadcom isn't happy with 18A on some of their test chips. They did say a D0, which is the defect rate, of 0.4 right now.
Under 0.4.
Yeah. I have the old Kali Technologies die yield calculator. How big is a standard laptop chip is what? 10 by 12 mil?
Bigger nowadays. It's like 12 by 14 or even 12 by 16.
Okay.
Like, pretty big.
Yeah. I'm going to, if archive.org loads, this is arguably one of the best websites on the internet that no longer exists. Unfortunately. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste this link into chat when my computer decides to respond. Here we go. The die per wafer calculator, not a die per wafer calculator. So let's go for 12 by 14 on a 300 millimeter wafer. So for those of you who can see this, die width, die height, scribe line. So that's just your cutting area. Edge loss is the edge around, is the difference between this red circle and the green circle. And what you get here is the green die are full die, the yellow die are partial because there's something in the edge loss, and these gray die with the white spot are where the defects are. So we've said 12 by 14. Total dies on a wafer 341, which is this number here, just underneath the wafer. And if I put that at 0.4, this means with this size chip, we have a yield of about 53%. And that's typically good enough for first products. They're a little bit expensive, a little bit early, but that's pretty good, especially with what? With 3/4 away from 18A ramp or something. So that's pretty good. Just to give you a context of TSMC 7 nanometer, which is very, very mature now. Their defect rate is 0.07, which means they have a fab yield at this size of 90. Now, some of these defects could end up in the same die. Now, so you get so this is worst case, and this is just physical defects, nothing about binning.
Yeah,
this doesn't include parametric yield.
But also, N7 has also been around for over 5 years at this point, right?
It's a very mature process.
I think we actually have graphs from TSMC.
Yeah, we do.
Approximately where they were. And if I remember correctly, N7 was approximately at 0.3 for about this time frame. If my memory serves. I could very much be wrong there. So
yeah, that would be a 95% physical yield. So for them to be on 0.4 at this point, yes, that's really good. If we're talking about big dies, 25 by 33?
Yeah.
With a 0.4, yeah, you're not going to get that many.
Yeah, you better have some hefty bins there.
Yeah. Let's see if I can extrapolate this by playing with everything else. You can get some yellows to appear. But yeah. But that's with like reticle busting. But if I just go for 10 by 10, which is a standard smartphone chip, that's still a 68% yield. Compared to the 0.7, it's 93%. It's to be honest, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So the fact that Broadcom obviously wants the big silicon, a smartphone vendor like a MediaTek might want the small silicon. And if we want chiplets, then one of the benefits of going chiplets is smaller dies, higher yield. So I have no qualms with Intel saying we're refocusing from 20A to 18A. If it works, it works. So use it. And then we'll get into this bit. So okay, into AWS. Take it away, George.
So let's start with this custom Xeon 6 chip on Intel 3. What I kind of suspect this is it's using Granite Rapids so the Granite Rapids compute dies, and then the Granite Rapids D, so that's the embedded / telco / networking chips. That IO die. Now that IO die, as disclosed in Hot Chips, has I believe 200 gig networking.
It does.
PHYs in it embedded. I don't quite know what the capabilities of that are. Like, I don't know if it's the full. You can just do a line out and it's perfectly fine, just strict Ethernet. I don't quite understand what the eccentricities between those are, but there's 200 gig NICs, and then a reduced PCIe lane count. However, for someone like AWS, that built-in networking may be far more valuable in certain cases than, say, 120 something PCIe lanes, right? Or however many the big IO die for the standard mainstream parts for Granite Rapids is. That's kind of what I suspect it is.
So I've got a very completely different view.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is actually talking about two chips, right? An AI fabric chip is one.
Yes, I was talking strictly about the Xeon 6 chip.
Okay. So AWS already has a very strong fabric called Nitro.
That's your DPU.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact, and smart DPUs are starting to become a thing. So, excuse me, I just think that's that. And the whole point is you can connect with the current Nitro. I think it's 3 Graviton chips to 1 Nitro, and they all use the Nitro as their access point into the rest of the data center. So rather than having 3 network points for 3 CPUs, you have 1 network point for 3 CPUs. And so reduce all your cabling costs and all your NIC costs. And because it's a custom design, you can get it to be smart. I think Amazon does this. Google has some crazy stuff that they do on some of their systems with optical. But all the others just use regular networking. So yeah, when it says we produce a custom Xeon 6 chip on Intel 3 that builds on our existing partnership. Now, since Xeon Scalable Gen 1, if you look at all the Xeon chips sold, half of them have been semi-custom, right? Because Intel's definition of semi-custom is it has perhaps a different core count, frequency, and power that other people can't buy. So normally, it'll be take the 8268, Xeon 8268. Well, if you got the C version, then that was used by Baidu, because that technically uses 15 more watts and can go 100 megahertz higher. That, in their mind, is semi-custom. And all it is a function of binning and turning the things on and off, right? There's some talk in the chat about, defective chips. Can they be cut down and used in product? If it's a multi-core chip, then yeah, they could just disable a couple of cores and that becomes a new product. Some areas of a chip design are more prone to defects than others. So say the cache is prone to defects, but Amazon wants a cache-heavy product, they may be prepared to go for a semi-custom version which has all the cache enabled but fewer cores. So the only difference here is that it does say custom. And AMD did a custom chip for Frontier because they used a custom IO die. And so what George is saying here is that they can take a Granite Rapids, but with a custom IO die. And that custom IO die may be something derived from Granite Rapids D, their embedded side. But then, again, it's custom chip in the cores are the same.
Yes.
The fabric is the same. The socket may or may not be the same. Who knows? It's not a custom architecture. They may turn some things off because that makes it more power efficient. I don't know. So, they might change the decoder or how the branch predictor works, because Amazon knows its workload and knows it doesn't need to burn the extra power to get to what they need to. So,
but yeah,
Intel's been doing this for generations. So, my question would be, how exactly is this different to them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chiplets makes this easier to do.
Yes, it does, because you don't have to do multiple dies per se. Now, on the AI fabric chip, I do agree that could be, say, a new version of Nitro, but there's also something else it could be, and that could be, say, an AWS version of NVSwitch for their Trainium chips, right? That's also another possibility that I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, no, that's good. Intel also has silicon photonics, so it could be something that focused as well.
And
Graviton,
then
I think Graviton 3 and 4 both used
they use
Intel
EMIB.
packaging. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, speaking of so going down to the last sentence, more broadly, we expect to have deep engagement with AWS on additional designs spanning Intel 18A, 18AP, and Intel 14A. What this reads to me like is that AWS may, who knows, we don't know, make parts of Graviton on Intel Foundry. What
Like the
parts? Potentially
PCIe
the compute
memory
die,
controller.
maybe the I/O die, the
Yep.
the PCIe dies, maybe the memory controller dies. We don't know, but this sort of reads to me like it could be that, or
Yeah.
potentially future Inferentia and Trainium parts on Intel.
Yeah.
Right.
But it does mean that Annapurna is going to be using Intel Foundry, which is going to be interesting. But at least
Yeah.
they don't have to use Intel internal tools. This is all Cadence
Yes.
Synopsys. So that's good. Yeah. And, what we're saying also contributes to this, advanced packaging momentum,
Now,
because Intel has got rid of their traditional packaging business because it's low margin. Somebody else can deal with that. Also, as Intel products pivot mostly to advanced packaging as well. So,
now, Secure Enclave, that's nice. This is going to be U.S. government contracts for the military and whatnot.
it says up to $3 billion, and as with all government money, lots of strings attached.
Yeah.
I will say that the CHIPS Act money, as in the big money, hasn't been dispersed yet. And that's because the way it works is companies submit a proposal, the government gives everybody a provisional award, and then they have to essentially build out their proposal.
Yep. Now,
So they're in the build out proposal, and Intel and the government, as I understand it, are arguing right now because the government says you've got to commit to certain things, and Intel's arguing it basically, well, we have for the past 10 years. Do we not get any credit for that? And it's things like don't buy equipment for EU fabs, and one of the reasons for that is why they're delaying stuff as well. But we'll get to that when we get to that bit.
Yeah. Greater independence for Intel Foundry. I think that this is again, I'm not a finance person. I think this is probably going to be in the end a good move. And I don't quite know what they mean by independent subsidiary inside of Intel.
So it basically means it's going to have its own board of directors, its own CEO, but it's still fully owned. As in, it acts fully independent and can make its own decisions. In the same way that Mobileye kind of is, but they've also divested some ownership through a partial IPO. The same with Altera. Basically, this is designed to build that firewall. One of the biggest criticisms for Intel Foundry for customers is how do we trust that Intel products isn't going to find out what we're doing?
Yeah.
And so Circuit Rewind says, think like the Pokemon Company. It's entirely independent of Nintendo, but it is a fully owned subsidiary. It does its own thing. It's functional, but it also means that each department is subject to their own performance metrics, right? Intel Foundry has to fight for Intel Products business, and Intel Products has to use the best process node for their products. So, yeah. The argument is this makes it easier to split.
Yeah.
However, I'll get into that now because this is probably a fuller video that I might record next week. Intel can't split its fabs right now. It's impossible.
I think we've covered this last time.
I know, but I want to rant again because it keeps coming up. Intel can't split it because Intel 14, Intel 10, and Intel 7 all use Intel's own internal tools for designing chips. They don't use Cadence, they don't use Synopsys, they don't use Siemens. So if they were to spin out, they would have to guarantee essentially a wafer supply agreement with Intel products. But the thing is, Intel products is still the only people in the world that can use that process. And it's unlike Global Foundries that have a wafer supply agreement with AMD. Global Foundries could go get other customers because they use industry standard tools. So I have to keep saying this to investors because I keep getting asked, what if they split? I'm like, they can't right now. Not until not until I want to say like 80% of the revenue of Foundry comes from, public nodes, essentially. 14, 10, and 7 are private nodes right now. It may change when UMC comes in and builds UMC 12, Intel 12, that uses a PDK built on Cadence and Synopsys for Intel's manufacturing, but that's 27 at the earliest. So, yeah. Rant again. You're a bit loud, George.
Oh, am I?
Yep.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I muted my mic because you were ranting, so I was like, no need for me to say anything.
Yeah, it's because the system auto corrects for audio volume. So,
okay. Is that better?
Yeah. So manufacturing build out. So this is these three segments. So yeah, and I guess another mini. Sorry, no, you go because I've got opinions on this.
So on the first bit, the pausing of projects in Poland and Germany, that doesn't surprise me, especially because we've been hearing that the German government has been putting more and more paperwork in front of Intel, so delaying it and just sort of, allowing that paperwork to
regulation,
yeah, is probably a smart move.
Also, the reports of the French and Italian investments they wanted to make are kind of disappeared now for a number of reasons.
Malaysia being completing construction of the Malaysia fab again. I think they were pretty close to finish with that. So again, that doesn't surprise me. And no changes to any US fabs. Again, that's because they're basically a lot of that or some of that is going to be US funded. So that not changing again, there's no surprise here.
It's so my take on this is Intel hasn't optimally conveyed the messaging it was supposed to. So you remember when Pat took over, he turned around and said, Intel for the longest time has had a spare shell, a spare empty fab, such that when demand ramps up, they can fill it full of tools and just set it to go and start making money. That narrative, and they said, we're going to build in Ohio, we're going to build in Germany, we're going to build here. That narrative turned from let's build shells to let's build fabs. Right? All this message is saying is that we're now going from let's build fabs to let's build shells. Right? So Germany, they're going to build a shell. They've built a shell in Israel. Malaysia, they're building a shell, but they're not filling it with tools. That's basically what that is. So
I'm pretty sure Fab 42 in Arizona was a shell for a very long time.
Yeah. It's the narrative should have been we're implementing our shell strategy, because in the last financial there was hints of the fabs being underutilized right now because demand for Intel is lower than expected. If you have shells sitting idle, all you're doing is paying property tax. If you have tools in there, you're losing more money than you need to be.
You're losing an insane amount of money.
Yeah. So my point is, so they started talking about what nodes would be where in 26, 27, 28. So now they're saying they're pausing for 2 years and they're going to base it on anticipated market demand. That either 2 years is just an arbitrary figure, or they're saying, oh, we know that we'll have customers 2 years further out than expected.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just a case of we're building shells.
So, yeah, I think again, a lot of this is, if you knew anything about how Intel worked, none of this should be that surprising.
I mean, it's you commit to spending money, but then realize, oh, we don't need to spend it all right now.
Yeah.
Right. But also shells are easier to sell.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. If a Bosch or an Infineon or somebody else wants to jump in and they want extra capacity, hey, here's a $2 billion shell that's already been made.
Or if they want to buy part of the shell.
Yeah.
But moving on to Intel product portfolio.
Actually, I do want to bring in a couple of comments here. One friend of the show is saying, hit that thumbs up button, help us support deep technical analysis. Always good to see you, Juan. Go see his channel, Some Gadget Guy, and his weekly show. Peter Bennett over on LinkedIn is saying, are you quite sure Intel still uses internal EDA tools on all products? Thought they were mainly Synopsys and increasingly standardizing on tools right the way through. They know this is a central foundry and have had years to sort it. So they're internal tools for the older nodes. All the new nodes, 4, 3, 20A, 18A, and all the variants, and Intel 16, I think, which was 22 FFL. Yeah. They're using industry standard tools. All the 14, 10, and 7, and all the older stuff, any of that exists. I think they still have some 22 production. That's all internal. That's still all internal. That's why UMC is coming in and building a PDK for Intel 12, which is essentially using the 14, 10, 7 equipment that can't be used for 4 and 3 or whatever. It's but that's still. I think they said 27 before that's going to be ready, and then that will be built on standard tools. So, Noy says, what about the packaging plant in Poland? They've been approved to receive €1 billion and even started groundwork, but now stopped. Yeah, they're not going to. They might. Depending on whether they want the €1 billion back, the thing is, even if they get 1 billion, they still need to go spend 2 to 10.
Well, and not just that. Okay, great. They've been approved to receive it. Now, when are they going to receive it?
Yeah, there's that too.
So,
don't think of sunk cost fallacy hits a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or don't chase good money.
Don't assume that just because a preliminary contract has been given that it will continue, essentially.
It will execute. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about Intel products.
Focus on x86. This was actually very well worded.
Yes.
Because
I do have some questions here.
Okay.
So mostly with regards to moving edge in automotive into CCG.
That's weird, yes.
When you have a group called Network and Edge.
Yep.
That just seems strange to me. Moving integrated photonics into DCAI, yeah, that makes plenty of sense. But the whole edge and automotive into CCG.
I mean, definitions of words hurts here, right? Because part of CCG is like Intel vPro.
Yes.
Right? And you could ask you, is also Xeon E, not E cores, but the lower end stuff.
The Xeon that are based on client dies.
Yes, yeah. The thing is, that's all edge business anyway, right? That's literally edge business. So why not stick it there?
Yeah.
The thing is, DCAI is very much enterprise data center. It's not cars, right?
No.
But
But I'm saying, why are they moving edge and automotive out of
right.
Next?
Because Next is all about infrastructure.
Then I would say that they need to rename what Next is.
Yeah, it's the infrastructure,
Yes.
group.
Yeah, just call it T&I. Telco and infrastructure.
Yeah, because networking and telecommunications is all about how do we get data from one area to another.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
But it's
which isn't edge or automotive.
Yes, but having the word edge in Next is just, and then saying you're taking edge out of it is weird.
It's because NE from networking, and X from it's, but also it means that you can move around some money to where the margins look better.
Yeah, I get why you would do that, but my point is just naming. It's just naming.
Yeah. So it's, I think the point here is that is it here in this section they mentioned that they maximize the value, so they're going to go into more custom stuff, but they've been saying that for years.
That's not
simplifying our portfolio, that's the one that a stronger that's why I think this segment is very well written, because the important point of this segment is it hit hiding in plain sight. Simplifying our portfolio means getting rid of some product lines. So we are going to see a simplification. And to an extent, I think we've already seen this with the Xeon 6, is it the 6700E? The SKU stack is what, 7 SKUs?
Yeah.
And not 50? Right? Simplifying portfolio.
SKU stacks are infamous for being pages upon pages.
Yeah, it's where is it? Do you want to see all my Skylake processes?
Oh yeah. I love how you just have a tray. Yeah.
There's Broadwell, Haswell. There's my AM3 Plus. You don't want to go in there. That's even worse. But yeah, no, it's I think Skylake had something like 97 separate desktop SKUs.
And that's not including anything that's off roadmap.
No.
For some company.
Yeah. So it's what's going to be important as we go forward, and this is perhaps something we would have heard of at Innovation next week if it was still going on, is what simplifying the portfolio means. So it could mean no more flex GPU. It could mean selling off parts of different businesses, right? They've already stripped down the they've already sold their 4G business, right? Because that's declined since somebody else is taking care of it. They've already sold off the Nook business, right? So simplifying portfolio to unlock efficiency and deliver more integrated solutions. Basically, can they do full end-to-end? Or so yeah, it's keep an eye out on that.
So
I've got to hand it.
I would like to get to this last part. We are integrating our software. Software and incubation business into our core business units to foster more integrated roadmaps, unlock efficiencies, and create value.
Synergy.
Now, what exactly does this mean? because this could go either really well or really badly. And the way that it could go really well is if they go for a unified software ecosystem on their AI accelerators.
No. Okay. So
let me
okay.
rant.
Sure.
Let me rant a little bit here, okay? You ranted plenty. Let me have a bit of a rant.
Yep.
But where this could go horribly wrong is if the folks in the different software departments don't talk to each other. So you end up with both work overlap and potential forking of a whole bunch of things.
Redundancy.
Yes. Yeah. Or potential incompatibilities. So yeah, that's what I mean is it could go really well and do a whole bunch of great things, or it could go really badly. You sort of have to follow this line of making sure that people talk to each other.
So it's one thing to have like a software BU, but the minute you integrate it across your business, you then get parts of software everywhere.
Yes.
And it becomes very difficult, to...
There basically needs to sort of be an overarching... I'm basically arguing for an overarching group that can basically just go, yeah, this all needs to be put together.
Well, okay, so AMD is doing this right now with their AI. They have a head of AI, but AI in every BU. Yes. They also did that with graphics back in the day. You remember they integrated graphics into every BU, and then they had to split it back out so they could refocus on it again.
So
what I think, I don't necessarily think this is that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So software was always the domain of the CFO, Lavender. I'm forgetting his first name. I had it like 2 seconds ago. Greg Lavender. There we go. Greg Lavender was, head of software, and I always felt it should have been a BU in the P&L, in the financials of its own right. But the thing is, Intel's not a software company, right? So they don't really have a proper P&L for it. What it just means is that because it says into our core business units of more integrated ramps, it does feel like they're trying to do the separate bits everywhere. One of the things that I've had criticisms heard from employees is that work does get duplicated many times because Intel's a company that has lots of 20+ year lifers, engineers, and they're all very proud of what they do, so they hoard onto things. And so in order for somebody to get hold of something, one, they have to know that it exists internally, and if they do, try and get hold of it and try and use it. But now the person who owns that team, that software, doesn't want to support someone else because they built it for their own purpose, so everybody has to go build their own. You have to break that apart essentially, and this is essentially what they're trying to do. The incubation business, is that just Intel Capital?
I had no idea on that. Maybe that's like bringing up software, like software incubation.
No, it's Intel Capital is basically a...
No, I know Intel Capital, but I thought that Intel Capital was sort of a separate thing altogether.
Yeah,
which is why the whole incubation part doesn't really make sense. But
it's so Intel Capital is a fully owned subsidiary.
Yeah.
In that context, thing is, do we read this as we are integrating our software business and incubation business, or is it our software and incubation business? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
anyway,
yeah.
Moving.
Okay.
Swiftly.
So financial performance. We've covered the layoffs. This is a key point, I think, that a number of press have picked up on.
That would make sense. So Noe in the chat says incubation is probably Intel Ignite. Okay, that would actually make sense because if I remember correctly, that also includes software stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, this would all make a ton of sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fair. Because there's also Ignite UK, Ignite US, Ignite Canada, Ignite EU. But in terms of financial performance, yeah, reduce or exit about 2/3 of our real estate globally by the end of the year. Intel owns a lot of land and a lot of buildings, some of which it doesn't need to own, some of which it can sell, some of which it can sell and lease back. There's another company who did this 8 to 10 years ago. They sold called AMD. They sold their headquarters.
They sold
and
the
leased it back.
Sunnyvale.
Yeah, or the Sunnyvale one, not Austin.
No, they did do lease back on Austin as well.
Oh, they did. Yeah,
they basically did it for all of their properties because they needed the cash at the time.
Yeah, it's an easy way to get an injection of cash. In the long term, obviously, it costs, but the people who now own the buildings and the land, and you can get 30, 50, 100-year agreements, whatever. They're now in charge of keeping them up to date and keeping them clean.
Mm-hmm.
So that it means you no longer need as extensive facilities management team on every site, because that's somebody else's problem. So yeah, it's a way to reduce OpEx.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
selling parts of the stake of Altera, that's been publicly announced. And IPO Altera.
Yeah, they said IPO in a couple of years. I have a feeling there may be some acceleration there, depending on how vital it is.
I would also.
We don't know how much
IPO either. Also, like, is this 5%? Is this 10%? Is this 50% or 100%? It's probably not 100.
Well, it's Mobileye is 10%.
Mm-hmm.
They also did some partial divestment of some of their R&D facilities in Germany. Was it? It wasn't called Bain. It was called something else, 4 letters. They did that late last year as well. That wasn't a sale again. That was like a 40% divestment.
Mm.
So yeah, they're finding ways that they can still keep control of everything, but not necessarily own it all.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that when the revenue comes in, and it depends on the revenue sharing agreements and whatever. So it's like having BlackRock fund half of one of their fabs. That's right. It means that their revenue, longer term may actually look lower or it depends on the agreement. Maybe once BlackRock gets its money back plus interest, they then go to a lower ownership amount, or Intel can buy it over time or whatever. So, yeah, and the next is just we're in it for the long run. I mean, yeah, interesting discussions during Hot Chips about just where Intel sits, and then this board meeting.
Yeah.
There's a whole spectrum. Everybody, people saying, how good is 18A and who's going to use it, all the way to what if, aggressive investors want to replace Pat, that sort of thing.
So moving on, sort of continuing with Intel news, we have announcements for their upcoming
the AI event.
Yep. On the 24th. With any luck, future plans, we will have a tech Poutine that day. But yeah, upcoming Granite Ridge AP and more announcements about Gaudi 3.
Yeah. So we get more of their AI strategy. And I mean, I can pause this video. We already know what these look like anyway. I'm not sure why they're hiding them. CoWoS based TSMC Gaudi 3, and the big Xeon 6900P. So Yeah, it's this is. I think they were planning to do this anyway before innovation.
I'm pretty sure that this was supposed to happen at innovation. Like I'm pretty sure that it was supposed to be one of those events where Pat goes, we have leadership in mobile and holds up Lunar Lake. We have leadership in server and holds up Granite Rapids.
Yeah.
But yeah, so look forward to that. Moving to the other side of the.
Well, speaking of other AI events.
Yeah, I was going to say, moving to the other side of the fence, we have the AMD AI event. So Zen 5 in Epic, so that's going to be Turin standard in Turin, what's being called D or Turin C. So that's Zen 5 and Zen 5C. And then next generation AMD Instinct. Maybe this is MI350, but more likely MI325X.
With HBM3E, which we already know all the details.
Potentially some Passando stuff. Maybe
so
with the networking and AI PC updates.
It's AMD had this event in December last year, and it was actually very well received. They said, I think in my AI per minute, they were second. In that graph right behind Intel of how many times they said AI. They had 17 people on stage, 17 companies over an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, I think. Basically, showcasing their MI300X 8-way system. We saw the precursors to UA Link. Companies talking about Infinity Fabric switches, Arista and a few of the others. They had a number of they had people like Kirk Skaugen, long-term Intel employee, now at Lenovo. It was an interesting, good event. George and I will both be at this one, which is in October.
Just under 3 weeks.
10th. Yep. So everyone can catch it. It's going to be live streamed, the keynote. There's also going to be a bunch of other stuff on site for us to see about the new hardware and how companies are using it, and hopefully access to people for Q&As. I need to ask who's going to be there to see. I think Vamu's going to be there, their new head of AI, who to go from Victor Peng. So yeah, it's going to be a chance for them to essentially do a 12-month forward look, because they've said they're making $4.5 billion this year on AI chips. They basically showcase how much more they're going to make next year on the demand.
So, well, speaking of AI and products from AMD, the big news about UDNA and AMD supposedly ditching high-end GPUs. So AMD announces unified UDNA GPU architecture, bringing RDNA and CDNA together to take on NVIDIA's CUDA ecosystem. So I have thoughts on this. I'll let you go on this.
Well, I kind of want to explain what the situation is right now, and the website is lagging. Typical Tom's hardware. It's so AMD right now has RDNA for graphics and CDNA for compute, Radeon and compute. And for me, it was a really good idea to bifurcate them, because there are certain things you don't need in compute that you do need in graphics, and vice versa. By having them split, you can essentially have targeted silicon for both markets. That's good when you have the market share to support it. The fact that it says to take on NVIDIA's CUDA ecosystem is a bit of a misnomer, because you don't use CUDA in graphics.
Well, okay.
You,
So,
you
well,
can use it for
here's
computing
something.
graphics.
Well, not just that. What does it mean? What do they mean by unified GPU architecture? Because that could mean a bunch of things. Does that mean unified ISA? Does that mean unified microarchitecture? Does that mean unified chiplet? What does that mean, right? And they haven't said, so we don't know, right? If this is unified ISA, then yeah, that's
So it's going to be unified
GFX 11
above.
is not that different from GFX 9, which is Vega. GFX 11 being RDNA 3. So if this is just a unified ISA, okay, that's not really new. If this is a unified microarchitecture, okay, that's interesting, not completely unexpected, but I also kind of doubt that that's going to be the case, because not even NVIDIA, despite what folks may say, Ampere A100 and Ampere gaming graphics cards are not the same microarchitecture. They're quite different. So what does this mean? This, in my opinion, I'm going to be conservative and say that this is probably a unified ISI.
Well, I mean, it's so it says here. So with UDNA, bringing those architectures back together. Yeah, and
but what does that? But what does architectures back together mean? Does that just mean a unified ISA? Like, because I could take it multiple ways.
We made some mistakes with the RDNA side. Each time we change the memory hierarchy of the subsystem, it has to reset the matrix on the optimizations. You know, a desktop GPU would have the same architecture as the MI300X equivalent in the future.
Except I would argue Jack didn't really.
To be honest, Jack sometimes doesn't.
Yeah, he didn't really answer the question.
No.
And I think that Paul actually asked a good question there, but I want to know more. What does this mean, right? Because again, this could mean a whole bunch of things.
It just sounds like Jack doesn't want to be doing two sets of optimizations, one for each market. The thing is,
again, absolutely fair.
But if you want it optimized specifically for each market, I mean, you don't need FP64 in the AI chip. You need it in the HPC chip.
Yeah, but you don't need it in the graphics chip. Other than for compatibility reasons, right?
Yeah. You know, the 1/24th speed or whatever.
And Noe, so on that point, hold on, I'm gonna, if you check your DMs in a second, I'm gonna send you a new article from Tech Power Up. I probably should have anticipated this question, but I didn't because I'm a bit crumb.
You haven't had your proper coffee yet?
Well, no, I have. It's just I forgot about this article until just now.
The thing that annoys me is this was a Q&A with Jack at IFA. Mm-hmm. I was there. Nobody told me this was going on. I would have loved to been in that room when it was happening. So,
and unfortunately, I couldn't make it to IFA, and I can't find the article. But the TLDR basically is they are bringing. They have said that ROCm is coming from APUs all the way up the stack.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you can have a one API like model where you have different architectures and different compilers, but a unified software interface.
Yes, but I'll talk more about that on the 24th about what API, but there's some stuff there. But yeah,
let's go to the other one because I think this is. I got a feeling Jack So the headline is AMD deprioritizing flagship gaming GPUs. Basically, not focusing on the high end. The feeling I got from this is these comments weren't expected to be made. So and the up and down is that Jack wants AMD to focus on 80% of the market where the most people are, not the 20% where he calls it here, the people who can afford Porsches and Ferraris, the people who can get a 4090 and arguably 4080, the people who he wants the $600 market, not the $1,600 market.
Now, my opinion on this, I would argue that you need the halo to sell the lower end stuff. So you should, as much as I can understand it from a business perspective, I really think that the king of the AMD needs to make, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, they need to make a big, massive 700 square millimeter GCD with a whole bunch of MCDs around it and build I hesitate to say what NVIDIA can't, because they probably can, but the best that they can build, because they really need to show that king of the market mentality, in my opinion.
The article you were searching for, I've got it.
Okay.
This one.
Yes, thank you.
So somehow AMD expansion plans for Serbia, they're basically building a software team there. However, AMD has like software teams in Romania and Hungary, and it's just stuff that they maybe have acquired or third parties that they've been working with for ages that they've just consumed into the company. And so this is just an extent of that. This is just saying ROCm, for everyone.
But if you right here, we're extending our ROCm subsystem to Radeon graphics products, so everybody can use AI on AMD APUs and Radeon GPUs.
Yeah, the thing is, they've said that before.
But I think this is the first time that they're specifically saying ROCm on APUs.
No. It's but by extension, the thing has always been, right now, ROCm on the consumer side is piecemeal.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the question is always, and they've already said, in future, we're going to support everything. The question has always been, well, will you back support stuff? That wasn't answered here. Right?
Was it not? Did I completely misread?
That there's nothing there that I think is new. Right?
Well, there. Okay, maybe it's just.
And so AMD strategies provide ROCm support across the entire stack, edge to core to cloud in all of these cases. Yes.
Yeah.
And then UDNA, I think the guy got a bit blindsided because he didn't even mention UDNA in the response. There's some things about data formats. This was a random. I mean, this was a very local event that TechTechPotato went to. They had a guy there, so and it's some of these smaller European countries are really good with software. I mean, I said I went on holiday. So part of my holiday was in Armenia, and the capital of Armenia is Yerevan. Synopsys has a 3,000 person office in Yerevan building some of their software because the talent is good. So
anyway, so apparently I misinterpreted that article, but
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's So first of all, he says it's you got to go after the market in consumer, but that in data center you still plan for peak. Well, I would argue you still plan for peak anyway. The question is, do you have the right strategy? Is it chiplets?
Yeah.
Is it? Don't forget, consumer GPUs are some of the lowest, especially mainstream ones, are some of the lowest margin products that AMD makes. Right? Intel makes a lot of money because a lot of people just buy the high end ones. But yeah, it's
But I would argue that you need the king of the hill to start taking market share.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would disagree with Jack's approach here, personally.
Yeah. He does have an argument that a lot of NVIDIA comparisons, basically people just shove 4090s in everything. And so if you have a Halo product, it still has to be competitive. Because you design.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying build what.
No, but it's like Intel's already said Lunar Lake is built for low TDP, and the minute you hit a certain TDP out the range, it doesn't perform it's not competitive, right? So yeah, you can optimize a piece of silicon, right, for that mid-range 150 watts GPU, but you can still design a piece of silicon for 300 or 350 watts.
Yeah,
that's why NVIDIA has multiple pieces of silicon. The way it's reading here is Jack's thinking about one piece of silicon for everything. And I don't think that's the right strategy.
Yeah, unless there was a loss of, there was some miscommunication here between Jack and Paul.
Yeah. I think Jack's been at the company almost a year now. We'll probably see him at Advancing AI.
Yeah.
In a few weeks. So maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll get him on for an interview. Ask him to clear up some of his comments. Okay, so moving on to more AMD stuff, the last AMD story, because it's something that we covered in the last one. This is AMD's core-to-core CCD-CCD latency. In the last episode of Tech Poutine, we mentioned the fact that actually results are lower. Results are worse than previous generations. And we discussed whether the benchmark was actually saying anything and having a knock-on effect on results. Because you have synthetic and you have real world. And synthetic's good at looking at architecture and design. The thing is, obviously, real world is a lot more nuanced and it's not continuously doing L3 core-to-core bouncing. But AMD noted it that it was the performance was worse. Excuse me. They launched new firmware, this Agisa 1202, and the testing's been done. And the link here is from Video Cards, and everybody's using a number of tools. This is the CapFrame X1. I know Chips and Cheese, you guys, use a variety of tools. I know in Antec we still have our tool. And let's see if we can see the HXL tweet. Yeah. So the point is we've gone from 100 plus 150 down to 75.
To me, it felt like a massive nothing burger.
Again, it's perhaps this is a bad job we're doing as reviewers in explaining how synthetics affect real world. I mean, sometimes synthetics are good just for saying, "Oh, this is a good design." The thing is, this is much more of an enterprise limiting factor rather than a consumer limiting factor.
I wouldn't even say that. Like, you really should not be pinging out of CCDs anyway. Like,
it was more of a factor when CCDs were first a thing. because
Well, yeah. So when you're
ground
having to
without it in
physically
mind.
leave, when you only have a 4-core CCX,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, that can matter. But when you're going up to 8 or even
yeah,
higher,
yeah. So we just wanted to cover it because we mentioned it last show. So that is all the Intel and AMD stuff. I want to cover this because it hit my radar. Because I've done interviews with Ampere's Renee James. We just had the disclosure of the latest Ampere 1 architecture. And George and co have a good write-up on that on Chips and Cheese, and we discussed it in a previous episode as well. However, the news today is that they may be selling, which
this doesn't
is
surprise me.
so they filed for draft IPO a couple of years ago
Mhm.
on I think they said an $8 billion valuation, but
Yes.
that was during the market highs during the chip shortage. Now it's obviously gone down and back up again. So they've still just had a draft IPO. Ampere Computing is partially funded by Oracle. The board of directors have people from Oracle and vice versa as well. So, and Ampere 1 as a chip was kind of seen as an Oracle first chip as well. That's been the impression we've got, even though the whole point is that it's a hyperscaler chip for hyperscalers that aren't doing their own.
So there's been some more news
On this.
about about Intel and Qualcomm.
Shall we get to that at the end? That's one of the topics later.
Oh, is it? Oh, it is. You're right. I'm being dumb.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it pinged up on the chat. It was like, oh, I should probably look at
that. So, I mean, this news. We're on Microsoft here, but it was does look like it came from Bloomberg first.
Mm-hmm.
Ampere has over 1,300 people, and they don't disclose their revenues because they're still technically a startup.
So they don't disclose, but if you go and you read Oracle's disclosures during their board meetings, because Renee James is on the board, they do some disclosure there.
Oh yeah, because they have to say it, but that's just the revenue they're getting from Oracle, not from anyone else.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So
there is some information you can glean from there, but
yeah. Yeah, and they've also announced 500 core plus products. Actually, interesting thing is that the current generation Ampere chips, the Ampere Ultra ones, built using Omnioverse, there was actually an update to, I think, the mem copy, the base M copy for the compilers to improve performance by 24%.
Oh yeah, that's I think old news at this point.
No, there was a newer update.
Was there? Because there was an update beforehand.
Yeah, no, there was an update earlier this year. There's been another one.
Oh, okay. I might be thinking of the one earlier this year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to cover that.
Yep.
Just because that was interesting on my side. And then this one as well. I did a video ages ago, earlier this year, about a supercomputer being sold because it was on an auction site and people were wondering if Linus was going to buy it. It was a water-cooled system, and people were working out the value of the chips and the memory, if it was all mothballed for parts, and whether you could actually make a profit on it. But it turns out that the former world number one So the previous one was a former World 20, I think. Former World #1 Summit at the Oak Ridge National Lab is being scrapped. It was a US government contract worth $200 million. This was IBM Power 8 plus NVIDIA. Volta 100 GPU.
Was it Power 8 or Power 9?
I think it was Power 8. Oh, sorry, Power 9.
Power 9, yeah.
9,000 Power 9 processors and 27,000 Volta GPUs with a peak performance of 148.6 petaflops. How many H100s does it take to get that now? Yeah, for a fraction of the power.
Yeah.
So,
unfortunately, unlike Cheyenne, this will likely not be sold and be completely scrapped and destroyed, because Summit was
nuclear research.
Yeah. So
and not necessarily the energy kind.
No. This was, I believe, the DOE frames it as protecting America's future with regards to nuclear warheads or some phrasing like that. But yeah, this is going to be shredded.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
And the thing is, it was #1. It first took the #1 spot in June 2018. So it's only been up for 6 years. And that to me seems very... So if we look down here, I'll zoom in. Summit was #1 at 8.8 megawatts. 2 million cores total. This... Now, we speak about companies and amortization of hardware, going from 3 to 5 to 7 years. The 6 years doesn't sound like a lot, because there are supercomputers that are still running, Haswell, Broadwell, still up and doing science, right? Even Xeon Phi, there are still Xeon Phi enabled systems running. So the fact that this is, only being decommissioned after 6 years, is, or yeah. I was going to say maybe somebody in China bought it because they could do with the hardware, but no, they definitely wouldn't be selling it.
No. They would not even sell this probably to like Microsoft or some other.
Yeah,
this is going to be absolutely shredded and destroyed.
But that's 200 million. That's not including the maintenance, but over 6 years, dollars per day, quite substantial.
Well, it's over. Yeah. Well, 6 years, over 200 million node hours.
Yeah. It says here that Oak Ridge is already planning a successor to Frontier, named Discovery, which is set to debut by 2028.
And I believe
So yeah, that means Frontier is going to be scrapped by the end of the decade, which is insane.
Yeah, potentially.
It's insane.
And Frontier will parts of it may be sold. El Capitan is going to be shredded, which is going to make me cry inside.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be utterly shredded.
Ask for an invite. Can I come and help? Can I come and do the shredding, please?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wanted to bring it up because I remember when we first reported on Summit back at Anantech, when it became #1. It seems insane that it's already end of life.
Yeah.
For
I would love an MI300A. That would be great. But yeah.
To be honest, some of these systems probably took more than 6 years for the proposal to be put together, then to be executed, then to be installed, and then it's like spending all day cooking a meal that you're going to eat in 30 minutes. insane.
Hey, for some people, that's the joy of it is not the eating it; it's the building it or the making it.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway,
yeah, and okay. So now we get into this, this part, and we'll go into what people are saying in the comments. Reuters. So our friend Max Cherney over at Reuters, doing a story about Qualcomm potentially acquiring parts of Intel's chip design business. So again, we've gone through multiple episodes now that Intel is simplifying its portfolio and divesting itself of certain ventures. Well, Qualcomm is apparently, according to Reuters, thinking, well, what's up for grabs? What can we buy? And things like Qualcomm is interested in Intel's PC business, the source says. Somehow, I don't think so. I don't think that's ever going to be for sale, unless it's bankruptcy Chapter 11. So
there is an update piece. I put the link in my
DMs, yeah.
No, in the Word, in your DMs and in the Word.
Yeah.
Apparently,
Okay.
it wasn't just pieces; it was a buyout. Supposedly, if the Wall Street Journal are in fact correct, there's not really much here other than they potentially may try and buy them out, and that's all the reports say.
Shares went up and down, but nobody said anything. Okay, that's a bit. So the value cap of Intel right now is 87 billion market cap. What's Qualcomm?
190.
So yeah, more than 2x the size. It's what's interesting here is what parts do you think fit well with Qualcomm's business?
That's a big question that I really don't have an answer for. Now that I'm thinking,
well, so you got to think what parts of Intel business aren't linked exclusively to the x86 stuff, because I don't think Intel would sell the x86 stuff.
No. Altera.
So yes, but Intel's already said that's going to be an IPO over time.
Yep.
Right.
Mobileye.
Again.
But I'm just thinking of the divisions of Intel that aren't directly x86 based.
Yeah.
The graphics parts of the graphics division.
So
maybe
you could argue so I was thinking if you take all of Arc, Intel Arc, right? Despite the fact that it's a critical element of the AI chip going forward, right? Qualcomm already has Adreno.
Yep.
And ever since Qualcomm announced AI PC and they're now in the market, and you've got yours, I've got mine. People have been asking about discrete graphics support, or are you going to build a big Adreno to make it go vroom vroom? And my response to this has always been, to investors and everybody alike, is Qualcomm's going to start where Intel was 4 years ago. And we know how much even first generation Intel Arc has improved in performance in 2 years of software updates. Qualcomm is going to have to go through all of that. So perhaps buying Arc would solve that. But no, because Qualcomm's built a whole brand around Snapdragon gaming on Adreno, not Snapdragon gaming on Arc.
Yeah.
It's all right. So Qualcomm would end up with 2 different graphics architectures internally, vying for business.
Yeah. Also, So Serbian in chat says P-core, E-core, GPU cores should be critical for Intel's future. Selling that is condemning the future of the company. They'll end up like IBM. Do you understand how rich IBM is? Like, IBM makes a crap ton of money. They are bigger than Intel in basically every way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, IBM's managed to create a consulting
business. They are a consulting business, right? And they're quite good at that. Like,
yeah, it's...
What's IBM's market cap? Let me go see.
They have 240,000 employees, so twice as many as Intel. I know that much.
Yep. And their market cap is, come on, 200 billion.
So slightly bigger than Qualcomm. Yeah, it's so given Falcon Shores is going to be a mixture of GPU cores, AI cores, and then CPU cores. Means they can't really sell Habana. They can't sell the NVIDIA stuff.
No,
because that's integrated in CPU now. Some software stuff, security, post-quantum cryptography. They can't do like flex GPU and stuff because that's still part of the GPU business.
Not just that IP's in the CPUs. The only way that they could do that, potentially licensing, either sell it and license back IP, which sounds weird, but could be done if truly in a squeeze.
So Intel Quantum, though that's tied to Intel manufacturing a little bit, and also does Qualcomm really want to put billions of dollars into a business which is still nascent? I think Intel's perspective. So there's a whole Intel Labs, which is their moonshot stuff. That's all that's under. Silicon Photonics, that might be a shout.
Why would Qualcomm buy that though?
Exactly, which leads to some of the other question.
Yeah,
one side of it is what could Intel realistically sell, and the other part is what would Qualcomm want to buy.
Well, and that's like if Qualcomm wanted to buy Intel, like wholesale, what would they get out of it other than maybe the server market?
Yeah. Well,
and then to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. So they could buy Habana.
Okay.
Right. Which means essentially Intel exits the data center AI business.
But where's Qualcomm's in there? Because yes, they have the cloud AI chip, but
well, no, it's perhaps that's it. Perhaps Qualcomm can actually take all that stuff to market properly.
But I would also argue that, okay, now I don't quite know how licensing IP and all that works. But if you sell off, let's say they sell off Habana, right?
And license IP back to Intel.
Well, no, how does that IP transfer work? Because, some of the stuff, like the Ethernet networking, right? That's just Ethernet networking. Intel has that. Is that would that be transferred?
So
I don't know. Like, legitimately, I have no idea.
So say somebody at Intel builds a chip out of other parts of Intel business, right?
Yes.
You have an internal license. So if you want an Ethernet MAC and PHY on your chip, you have to go to the Ethernet part of the business and essentially get an internal license, such that if that product is ever split and sold, the license can go with it.
Yeah.
So the IP is still owned by Intel, but the license to use it in that product.
Okay. Somebody is saying next. Okay. That could maybe make sense if it was still Edge and Telco.
No.
But that was split out.
The telco stuff.
Sorry, Telco's still there. Sorry, I'm thinking Edge and Automotive. That would make sense. Telco also could make sense. But the infrastructure stuff, I don't know.
So the whole point here is that Qualcomm is already quite strong in 5G and that side of infrastructure. Now, don't forget, base stations and stuff still need FPGAs and dedicated ASICs and whatever that other people build. And the question is, how much of that stack, how much of that chain end to end do you want to offer to clients, right? It's how this is part of my a small gripe I have with Intel, even working with a company, is that their org chart and their P&L are very different.
Yeah.
Right. You have the BUs, you have the 5 BUs, and you have Foundry. 5 product BUs and Foundry. But realistically, there's a software division, there's an incubate division, there's Intel Capital, there's Intel Labs, and all these little different parts of the business that are technically under one of the major headings, but they never. Whenever I've asked for an org chart like that, I always get the we don't make that public.
Which
they won't even.
Yeah.
So. Intel's already sold off its 4G business. They say it's already sold off the NUC business.
Yeah.
So, and you could say, well, the NUC is reliant on Intel CPUs. So
to some degree it is, but also it isn't, because you could stick other processors in there. Qualcomm, AMD.
I mean,
if you want stuff like small embedded platform like NXP CPUs or ST Micro or stuff like that, right?
And Asus could go and build those.
Yeah.
So.
But I think. So what's next on the list?
This is something I wanted to, because as people may know, I was in a former life I did chemistry. I've got a great video about how my old department is shutting down. You can go watch that on TechTechPotato. It's the one where educators have passion, save them. If you want to know a little bit about my education route to where I am today, that video is a good descriptor of it, and you can actually watch the people who taught me, who unfortunately are in a position where they're losing their jobs. It's a sad video. It's something that I really wanted to make for free for them, and I took some time out to go do that. Please do go watch the video. I think today is actually the last day for input on the petition. So if you have it in your heart to go sign a petition, today's the last day to do so. But Anton, so we live in a world of lots of general purpose hardware, CPUs, GPUs, even AI, right? They deal with lots of matrix math, and some of it is some of what we do in science isn't that clear cut. Anton is a series of chips built by a research agency called DE Shaw Research, or DESRES for short. DESRES is funded up by DE Shaw, who is a scientist and former hedge fund manager. He's made millions, if not billions. And this research group is his little plaything. Their goal is essentially to push research forward, and they're not worried about revenue, really. It's not a money-making business. If it's revenue neutral, it's great. But their whole purpose is, let's do research. Let's write research papers. And because they're in the field of chemistry and molecular dynamics, they went and built a chip that specifically is for molecular dynamics. So we're talking, dedicated ASIC hardware for force calculations. They've got a difference network engine. And I don't mean difference as in, Babbage difference engine. I mean, rather than send the value of a data point, it just sends the difference of the value as it changes from time step to time step across the network. Why? Because the difference has about 13 lead zeros, and zeros are very easy to compress. So the result, we'll go into a presentation, but I wanted to highlight this because 3 years ago, they announced Anton 3, their latest generation silicon, liquid cooled, full 60 torus type stuff. Really interesting. But Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center has decided to buy one, or buy a system, based on a 3.15 million 5-year award grant from the National Institute of Health. So it's going to be stood up in Pittsburgh. So that's PSC. PSC is a breeding ground for new hardware. They've got Cerebras in there. They've got Giga IO in there. They've got AMD NVIDIA GPUs in there. And Anton's been going on for a while, but I wanted to show this because this is the Hot Chips presentation from 2021. I love this talk. This was right up my street, and I think I still have an open invitation to go see them in New York because they're in Manhattan. However, it will be a off the record visit. I wouldn't be able to say anything after going in. It's a shame. But yeah, this is the hardware team. And I've used these slides in presentations that I've done. Molecular dynamics. Let's calculate millions of molecules over billions of time steps. All about, molecular force fields. You've got bonds, you've got electrostatic, and you've got far electrostatic. And Anton 2. And the whole point here is, you have a dispatch unit, a geometry core, local memory, pairwise point interaction module. How do you get some of these? How do you calculate the force between elements in your simulation? How do we make it better? All these cables to do all of this, and they've re-architected the core tile, and they've got dedicated bond calculators and angle calculators and force calculating hardware. They're dealing with all sorts of forces and molecular dynamics specific compression. And the chips look like this, and you've got edge routers and flexible SRAM, and lots of physical design and global routing, and a clock asynchronous clock mesh with repeating units, and power per chip is 360 watts, and you can do 110,000 atoms per node. And this was tape out in 2020. And this is what the chip looks like, and this is what the boards look like, and this is the bring up, and this is what the node looks like, and this is a specialist cooling strategy that can actually cool 1,000 watts per square centimeter. And you scale it up into 512 nodes, and it looks like this. And this is full 3D torus, every dimension. Cooling, 500 watts at below 65 degrees. And this is molecular dynamics performance, right? Simulated microseconds per day. In green here is the best conventional supercomputers. In the gray are the best GPUs. They're 100x faster. Which is insane in molecular dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this just goes to show what building a specialized chip can do for you, right?
Having the money to do it, because there's no market for this. They've spent more than 3.15 million to build this thing.
Well, no, the market is science. Unfortunately, the science market isn't particularly big, even if you factor in supercomputers.
That's revenue, not profit. That doesn't include cost of build.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've even selling one outside their own use is pretty amazing. So
the market is science. Sadly, science is boring.
So and a couple of small ones just to end, because we're approaching 2 hours.
Hey,
I saw that
we're binding the keys.
So it's George and I both have systems that are technically AI PCs, and on them you get a brand new key that just literally it's the CoPilot one there, right? Yeah. So they've replaced the right control key, or is it the right?
Yeah, no, it's the right control.
right control with CoPilot, and if you press it, the CoPilot app comes up.
I hate it.
Yeah, because you go to press the left arrow key and you accidentally misclick it, and now your computer spends 20 seconds deciding if it's a pencil or a ruler.
Because that was a Strix laptop, but I do Control Alt Delete with my right hand, so my brain is so ingrained to doing that.
Okay.
Right, my brain is so used to doing.
Yeah,
that.
it's
and it's like, no, can't do that no more.
I don't use Control Alt Delete anymore. I just use Control Shift and Escape. So, but yeah, the thing is, it was always remappable. You could have used some extra software, but now Microsoft is letting you do it. There's and it's in dev, and I wanted to highlight it because customize your CoPilot key on your keyboard.
Just make it Control, please.
Yeah. Oh, and look, it's another future.
Awesome. What the? You can't even see the article.
This is the future website. These are the people that closed Anantech. So give them all your clicks. Clearly.
If you have a mouse, this game will keep you up all night.
Yeah.
Great. I don't care.
And one final piece of news I wanted to bring in is Lattice. So this is like the in terms of FPGA players, everybody knows Xilinx and Altera, and then you have Lattice. Xilinx and Altera mainly focus on the mid to high end. Lattice goes on the mid to low end. Several videos on my channel about Lattice. Their CEO quit a few weeks ago to go be the CEO of somewhere else. It was kind of unexpected. We weren't really given much heads up, and so they, obviously interim CEO, which was Isam Ilashmawi. He's been interim CEO since June, but they've actually found somebody now. This is Ford Tamer, who used to be the CEO of Infi, who were acquired by Marvell. So silicon photonics, pluggable silicon photonics. He's now becoming CEO. They have an event in December, their FPGA Technology Day, which I'll be going to, and so chances are he's going to be serving up the keynote and initial impressions. I need to reach out to my friends over at Lattice because we might get him on for an interview, because getting somebody who was at Infi, I'll also ask him for the proper pronunciation of that, and how it's different. He's also on the board of directors for Grok, and until recently he was on the board of directors at Marvell because of the acquisition. So Ford is obviously a name he's adopted. His first actual name is Fuad. And it's funny because we actually have an analyst in the community called Fuad, who's a really nice guy, and he just goes by Fuad or Fudo. Everyone calls him Fudo, but Ford goes by Ford. And we didn't get a picture on this version. This guy. So he's taken over Lattice right now. If we go to the FPGA industry and the embedded industry is kind of going through a lull right now. So Lattice had like 11 quarters of constant revenue growth, and then it came back down. And that's because this market is like on a 2-year lag to the consumer and enterprise market. Remember, we went through a massive massive demand for chips, and then we went through record low demand. This industry is going through that right now, 2 years after the rest of us did on consumer and enterprise. So Lattice is going. They've got they've got a new CEO, and I kind of wanted to cover it here today. They're a $7 billion company, and it's all FPGAs are one of those things that they could do a lot more, and Lattice is one of the companies that's pushing them to do more. Altera actually just had an Altera day. I'm not sure if you knew this.
No.
It was unfortunately I was on I was on vacation, and so they're going through some of their new stuff as well. So that's fun. Might talk about that next week as well. And that's kind of it. It's so let's go through some of these questions that came up. So I know, so we said Intel's big board meeting the whole way instead of changing the banner. So some of the questions. Yak Duck asked earlier, does roadmap really matter when the company just paper launch it and release it globally a quarter later? Yeah, because usually at launch they can attribute some revenue to it. Right? It may be the tier 0 early adopter revenue, and it's not GA, but it's also a full announcement that it's ready.
Yep.
Actually, I did want to go back because Tipu Master gave us 2 Canadian and said, check out what Intel's doing on the Qualcomm news of acquiring the whole of Intel. Thank you for the $2, Tipu. Very much appreciated.
Like it was discussed, I don't really.
Everybody has a different approach to roadmaps, right? So
roadmaps do give some confidence that there's a plan, in place. Now, if you don't meet those roadmaps, that's when it starts getting dicey, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Circuit Rewind, no mention of layoffs, mention of reducing real estate, no mention of maintaining DuPont. Washington. Are we losing the largest employer that literally built the entire city?
So Intel's exact layoff strategy won't be known until mid-October. Because that's when people will be notified. Like say, divesting of reduction of real estate, some of it will be sold and leased back. I think most of it will. Any sort of dead real estate will be sold.
Yeah.
So
Cerebri, what's up with the quote unquote new 18A, old 20A? Okay. It's not this is not 18A is not old 20A. There was no renaming happening.
Yeah, no renaming at all.
In the last quarterly earnings, they present. Sorry.
Yeah, it's there's no point going into the details of the question because the general basically says Intel's not being consistent in its performance per watt gains node to node to node to node. And yes, I agree with you. And it is something the investors have brought them up on. It's like, you've not been consistent in this. And that's partly because part of Intel purely thinks about the foundry nodes. And part of Intel thinks about every node, which means some of the messaging has been inconsistent. Right. We are due. What you should take as rote is what happened at Foundry Day back in February this year, when they were talking about performance per watt gains, node to node to node. Unfortunately, that doesn't accurately line up with some of their financial forms. And people are saying, well, the financial forms should be the most accurate. I've got a feeling that it's just purely a misunderstanding from the financial team on those documents. Take what they said in February as rote. So there's been no renaming. 18A isn't the old 20A. 18AP isn't the old 18A. The designation between them is more of a function of what IP is supported. Like I said, 18A is a superset of 20A. 20A did high speed logic and some SerDes IP. 18A does all the IP that's necessary to build in the proper SoC. And some enhancements on the foundry side. Yeah.
Power 666 says Intel has lots of talent and great technologies. They just lack the knowledgeable management for the left hand to speak to the right hand to make great products. Sometimes that does happen. Sometimes the left hand does struggle with what the right hand is doing. That can happen in any company.
Sometimes it's a function of size. Sometimes it's a function of style, management style, company culture. And to a certain extent, I mean, I guess I've been seeing this more recently as I get older, is the companies that have people who stay there for long times and give employees a lot of control. A number of those employees tend to get very protective over their work. Basically, this is mine, nobody else can have it. Now, there are employees that don't do that and understand that, if it benefits the company, it's going to be good for everyone, even if I may get laid off later. Some people want to get into a position of job security by saying, this is mine, nobody else can have it. And that requires strong management to fix.
Yeah.
They may be a brilliant person individually, but if they're going to hoard their IP, if they're going to hoard their talent and not make it accessible to the company writ at large, then it's ultimately long-term detrimental.
Again, Vince from Circuit Rewind. Great retro channel. Would recommend. Altera makes the best retro game console on the market right now on accident. This is in reference to the Mr. FPGA console. Yeah. And it's great. It's great that FPGAs can do that. And there's another question or another comment from Vince. It's about developers, though. If a developer doesn't have access to the hardware easily, it makes it harder to code for. This is about getting the compute architecture in the developer's hands. And this is about UDNA and Rockham.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's also about Qualcomm.
It's about and even Intel, right? Because realistically, like Habana, you can only program Gaudi if you have a Gaudi system.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a reason why for Intel, AMD, and to a lesser degree Qualcomm, just because I don't have quite as tight ties with Qualcomm. Hopefully we'll be changing that. I've been harping on software. Like
the thing is, when you ask for hardware to be made easily accessible, different people understand different things by what you mean by accessible, right? For some people that means dev environment in the cloud. For other companies, a $600 device is accessible. It's one of the things I've managed to do with TensTorrent, essentially, is get them to build dev kits that people can buy, because that means people will go and buy hardware and learn to program on them and develop tools for them. It's funny you bring that up, because I think did I do this last show, talk about the Qualcomm dev kit update?
Yes.
Yeah. So for people who didn't see the last show, because it's in the middle there somewhere, Qualcomm's dev kit should finally be on the market in September. There was an issue with the HDMI port on the dev kits, and it isn't clear whether they had to go scrap all the ones that they'd made and rebuild them, or desolder, resolder, or whether it was a licensing issue or whether it was a hardware issue. It can't be a hardware issue because our devices have ports, right?
Well, it could be a PCB issue. I think it could be a trace layout issue. It could be any number of things. But
given it's taken them an extra 3 months, I suspect that they've tried to do a respin of the PCB and it still doesn't work. So the So the idea is but it means that they have to redesign the shells to not have a HDMI port. And what they will do is they will bundle a Type C to HDMI converter, a DP Type C to HDMI, and they're also going to shave, I think, 10% off the price.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's so things like that are getting more into production, and yeah, it's funny. Before, during the pre-show, we were speaking about the NNPI from Nirvana. M.2 AI thing on an M.2. You've got Intel's Neural Stick. You've got the Google Coral TPU. It's funny how hard these things have been to acquire. From official sources, because they end up being a limited release in limited regions to people who just happen to know at the right time because they've been limited runs. If they actually, the thing I like about TensorTorrent strategy is that it's been their dev kits have been announced for months now, almost a year since they announced the first dev kit, and it's still online that you can click add to basket and buy.
Yeah. So Elon Devash says, I'm all for cheap hardware for the masses, but for AI, you want to hold. If you want to hold, you have to have a DGX-like platform on AWS, GCP, or Azure.
For big stuff, yes.
Yes, but you also need to be able. So this has a Radeon iGPU on it. Let me use ROCm on this.
Yes. Let me get access to this or whatever. Or
I have a 79.
You got a Snapdragon chip.
I have a Snapdragon chip. I have a Strix laptop. Let me program them with the tools you already have. Right? That's what I'm saying. Right? It's great to have these big machines in cloud providers, but I need to see the stuff that I can go and run and program for.
He mentions that from a corporate perspective, he searched for Gaudi 2 machines in the cloud.
Yeah. There were none, effectively, unfortunately. There were very few like tier 3 CSPs, maybe one tier 2, but it was thin. Gaudi 2 was very thin on the ground.
Gaudi 3 is expected to be wider.
Yeah.
But more expensive, obviously, from a cloud costing perspective.
Yeah.
It says they should send dev kits to popular open source projects. Yes, they should. Unfortunately, people don't think that far ahead. So our good friend Felix, right? He's part of the Chips and Cheese Advisory Board. I'll bring him up again. TensorTorrent. He's been 2.5 weeks in TensorTorrent, and he's been tasked with a number of things. Part of them is developer relations, and enabling a development strategy on certain parts. So he's working with people that they're able to distribute hardware to or give credits on TensorTorrent's cloud, to help develop and build the software stack, right? It's and because Felix knows a bunch of people in open source and HPC and AI and stuff, he's working directly with them. So it's yeah.
And I think, unless you have anything,
This is the CUDA moat that everybody keeps talking about. I'll say again. I went to the first ever CUDA course outside the US in 2009.
And Vince, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. There's a reason why I've been pushing for certain things as best as I can. It's because you need to have the small stuff and the big stuff. You need both.
So this is AMD's problem. They've got too many different architectures from top to bottom for AI.
But it's okay.
Which Intel is trying to solve with one API, singular interface, multiple endpoints.
But one API doesn't. it's not as it's not like CUDA. That's the issue. Anyway, it depends. Okay, there's so many different. I could talk for an hour about this, but I do need to go eat something because I'm starting to get really hungry at this point.
His blood sugar's low. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good. We next week we're planning on a Tuesday. So it's actually going to be a short time, but there's a reason why we're doing it on Tuesday.
Yep. And that's because of the Intel announcements.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Wednesday is TSMC's packaging event. So yeah, next week we're planning on doing a tech routine on Tuesday, probably around the same time as we started this one, or perhaps even a little earlier, because George and I will be in the same time zone at least. It means that I'll be running off my laptop, not this, not a fancy thing. So, yeah. So thank you all for joining in this round of the Tech Poutine. I hope you are full and will be requesting dessert shortly. I'm Potato.
And I'm Cheese.
And we will see you in the next one.
Have a good one, y'all.